Arc Raiders is not dealing with cheaters. Arc Raiders is being gutted in the parking lot while the dev language still calls it a maintenance issue. That is where we are. A bad patch is when players get mad. A dead game walking is when players die, stare at the screen for half a second, and go, yeah, obviously that guy had software. That is not frustration anymore. That is conditioning. That is the game training people not to trust what they are seeing. And here is the line that should scare anybody paying attention. If your first reaction to dying is not "what did I do wrong," but "was that even real?" your game is already bleeding out. That is the problem with Arc Raiders. Not that cheaters exist. Every online game gets vermin. The problem is that this genre cannot survive people expecting them. Extraction games run on one thing: trust. Trust that the danger is real, the risk is real, and the other idiot in the lobby is chained to the same miserable rules as you. That is the high. You sneak around with your bag full of junk, your pulse hammering, telling yourself one more room, one more crate, one more terrible decision, and maybe this turns into a story. Now kill that trust. Now picture some loser with SP already knowing where the best loot is, where you are heading, and what angle you are about to hold before your brain even commits to it. Suddenly this is not a tense extraction shooter anymore. Suddenly you are not playing the game. You are background noise in somebody else's cheat showcase. That is why people are so angry, and that is also why the usual dismissive replies sound so brain dead. Every online game has cheaters. Great. Every city has rats. That is not a reason to hand them the keys to the pantry and call it part of the atmosphere. The issue was never that cheaters exist. The issue is what cheating does to a game built like this. Because Arc Raiders is not some disposable shooter where you die, sigh, respawn, and forget the whole thing by the next corridor. This is extraction. That matters. People show up for the nerves, the greed, the pressure, the way your own brain becomes your worst teammate. They show up for the run where your bag is already too full, your luck is running on fumes, and some rotten little voice in your head still whispers one more room. That is the addiction. You creep through a map listening for footsteps. Your pulse is trying to climb out of your neck. Every container looks like salvation, every corridor looks like a grave, and somehow the game convinces you that 10 more seconds of bad judgment might turn garbage into legend. That is the rush. Not because people want a guaranteed win, but because they want a situation that feels alive enough to bite back. So, when cheating gets into a game like this, it does not just create annoying bad matches. It reaches into the center of the whole structure and starts tearing wires out. Because the actual engine here is trust. Not lore, not progression. Trust. Trust that the fear is real. Trust that the risk is real. Trust that the other person trying to kill you is trapped inside the same ugly rules as you. That is what makes a loss mean something. That is what makes a win feel stolen from fate instead of handed out by a menu. The second that trust starts slipping, the whole experience goes strange. It stops feeling like a tense extraction game and starts feeling like theater. That is why people get so angry. Not because they cannot handle losing. Extraction players lose constantly. Losing is what gives the miracle extract any weight at all. The bad run sharpens the good one. The ugly death makes the escape feel holy. Players can live with failure. What they cannot live with forever is the feeling that the failure was fake, that the death did not happen inside the same reality as their effort. That is the poison. Once that suspicion gets into the bloodstream, the game changes inside your head. You stop asking what you did wrong and start asking whether the match was real. That second question is a killer. It spreads through every weird profile, every suspicious flank, every high-value zone that somehow got vacuumed clean before you arrived, every death with timing that feels just a little too neat. And if your players are doing that math in the background, your game is sick. The defenders do not help either. They always say the same three pathetic things: maybe he heard you, maybe he has better map knowledge, skill issue. Right? Heard me through 3 walls, a hill, bad sightlines, and the collapse of common sense. Maybe he has better map knowledge, sure, and maybe my toaster is running military reconnaissance. Skill issue is still the dumbest phrase on the modern internet, because it is not analysis, it is just a lazy way to feel superior without having to think. No. Not skill issue, trust issue, integrity issue, community issue. Those are the real words. Because the long-term damage is not just that a cheater wins a fight. The long-term damage is that players start expecting contamination. That is the line. The moment somebody dies and does not even bother getting mad anymore, they just shrug and mutter, yeah, figures, you have crossed into ritual. That is not rage. That is resignation. And resignation is how games bleed out. Angry players still care. Tired players leave quietly. That is why Arc Raiders is so frustrating to watch right now, because the bones are there. You can feel the good game buried inside the problem. If the core was dead, nobody would bother ranting like this. Dead games get shrugs. Potential gets fury. That heartbeat is still in there, which is exactly what makes cheaters so pathetic in this space. They flatten all of that into dead utility. They do not want stories. They do not want friction. They want outcomes. The process is what scares them. Uncertainty scares them. Fair failure scares them. So they buy software to remove the only thing that makes the experience worth having, then sit there confused when the result feels empty. Of course it feels empty. You rip the soul out and now you are surprised the body looks stiff. And is not even some secret underground anymore. That is the other disgusting part. It is all open. Cheat showcases, demo clips, feature tours, radar previews, loot ESP, smooth aim, private tech bid packages. It all sounds like startup language for people who cannot emotionally survive a scoreboard. Those videos are not informative. They are advertisements for cowardice. Then the platforms that host them act neutral, like they are just documenting the scene. No, you are polishing the disease and putting referral links under it. You are running infomercials for losers and calling it discourse. Then come the anti-cheat statements, and that is where the whole thing becomes insulting. They always sound the same. We take fair play seriously. We are monitoring the situation. We remain committed to a healthy environment. Lovely. Meanwhile, some idiot with item ESP is crossing the map like he is doing inventory control for a haunted warehouse, and regular players are left wondering whether they died to talent or to a monthly payment plan. At a certain point the language becomes part of the problem, because this genre is fragile on purpose. It is built on scarcity, danger, and mutual vulnerability. That is the contract. We both go in. We both risk something. We both know this can go wrong. That is why the outcome matters. If one side gets to ignore that contract with software, the whole thing buckles, not just balance meaning. And naturally, because the internet is incapable of leaving any hobby uncorrupted, you also get the side hustle parasites, real money trading, farming low population server abuse, stream sniping, trophy hunting, all the usual swamp behavior. One group logs in hoping for stories, the other logs in treating the whole map like warehouse labor. That contrast is modern multiplayer in one ugly image. One side wants a memorable run, the other wants throughput, then those same people complain games are not fun anymore? No kidding. You removed uncertainty, removed danger, shaved off the exact thing that gives the whole loop flavor, and now you are shocked it tastes like drywall. Honest players remember the loot because of what it costs to get out with it. Cheaters only remember that they own it. And yes, the broader vibe around modern games makes this feel worse. Everything now gets flattened and sanitized in this careful corporate way. Older CFE grit bite. Too much new stuff looks like it was approved by talentless hacks who resent the loyal audience for remembering what flavor used to look like. That undertone matters. So, the cheating does not just feel like a technical issue. It starts feeling like part of a broader pattern: bland shell, strong core, weak response, slow leak, distrust. And that is how communities turn. That is how you get the sentence every game should fear more than outrage. It could have been great. That sentence kills faster than screaming. Outrage means players still care enough to fight. It could have been great means they are already stepping back and writing the obituary in their head. Arc Raiders is not fully there yet. That is the good news. The bad news is you can see the road from here. Once regular players start adjusting habits around cheaters instead of just complaining about them, the countdown has started. Avoid those hours. Skip those servers. Do not bring your best gear. Hope the lobby is clean. If please let this match be legitimate becomes part of the strategy, your game is limping. That is the indictment. Not that cheating exists. That players are learning to live around it. So yes, people are harsh about this, and they should be. The soft language had its chance. The careful updates had their chance. The tasteful little we hear you posts had their chance. If the lived experience still feels like honest players are volunteering to be background actors in somebody else's cheat showcase, then all that messaging is just room spray in a burning kitchen. Arc Raiders should be producing war stories. It should be the kind of game people lose whole weekends to, and then talk about like survivors. It should be building that horrible, wonderful extraction addiction, where every smart decision feels shaky and every dumb decision might become legend. Instead it is flirting with becoming one more cautionary tale. One more game with real tension and obvious potential, while parasites strip the copper out of the walls and the player base slowly gets tired. That is what people will remember if this keeps going. Not the dream, the rot. Anyway, that is the broadcast. If you are still loading in, I genuinely hope your next run is clean. I hope the fear feels fair. I hope the loot feels earned. I hope the guy who kills you is just better and not being puppeted by a subscription and a bruised ego. But let us stop lying to ourselves. If the thing keeping your extraction shooter alive is the hope that this lobby might actually be real, then you do not have a healthy game. You have a rigged machine wearing scavenger gear, and eventually people stop feeding the machine.